Okay, so what Nelson's doing right now is he's hammering in the drive pin in order to take a density test. You'll see why he's doing that here in a second. Lantosh over here at Koury Engineering again. Thank you for joining us on our Ask Jeff segment. Kind of give a better understanding, and not a lot of people understand this side of it, is what is a nuclear gauge, what does it do, and how does it work? And today we're going to go over that. Alright guys, so here we are, and this is a nuclear gauge. A nuclear gauge, what it does is it uses radioactive materials, those being cesium-137 and americium-241, to determine the density and moisture content of soil and aggregate out in the field. So what we have right here, this is the nuclear gauge. It's on what's called a standard count block. Every day before our technicians and inspectors perform density tests, they'll do what's called a standard count. Being that this uses radioactive materials, I don't know if you guys remember back in your old physics classes, a term called radioactive decay. Well, this has radioactive decay. And what the standard count block does is it takes that into account, and what it does is measure the radiation and see how much decay has occurred. So it's basically a daily calibration for the gauge to ensure that we're given accurate results. Now the gauges are calibrated, truly calibrated annually, where we take them to a service center. They run them through a series of tests to make sure that they're accurate. But this is the daily calibration we do every day out here in the field. So what's really important when we're taking a density test is that we're doing it on a flat surface. You don't want any voids greater than 1/8 of an inch underneath the nuclear gauge. Nelson, go ahead and start a test for us if you can. So you see here, he's putting in what's called the source rod. The source rod houses the cesium-137, and he's putting it into what's called direct transmission. He's doing a 6-inch test, and what's happening as he's doing this test is that cesium-137 is active, and it's scattering and reflecting through the soil. There's tubes inside of the nuclear gauge that measure not only the reflection but the scatter of that soil. The americium-241 is housed inside the nuclear gauge. It also scatters through the surface of the soil. What the americium actually picks up on is hydrogen. It gets captured in hydrogen and it gets reflected back up to those tubes. We get a measurement out of that. Hydrogen is in water, H2O. And then we can determine moisture content from there. Alright, so our density test has been completed, and now the important part, the results. There's a couple things that we look for in there. There are numbers that the nuclear gauge gives us, those being the wet density, the moisture content, and the dry density of the soil. We use that dry density in this case to determine the percent relative compaction of the material. In this case, our density test was 92%. The specification was 90. This test meets the spec.